So here's the camera equipment I regularly use for shooting weddings and portrait sessions. Everyone has their own kind of thoughts and ideas on what works best for them. As far as me and as far as what I incorporate into my business is concerned, this is the gear that I've found to work best and covers a large variety of different shooting situations. So starting on the cameras, I have 5 primary full frame bodies. So I have a D3s, a D4, a D750, a Df, and a D700. Probably my favorite camera out of all these is actually surprisingly the D3s, which is now quite a few years old. But I just really like the features and the button layout of all of this camera, and it just feels really solid in my hand. Probably my favorite. As far as my favorite sensor is concerned, I would say definitely the D4 as well as the Df, which both share the same sensor. This is essentially a D4 just in a smaller package and has a slightly worse autofocus system. The D750, I gotta admit, even though this is a very popular camera amongst wedding photographers, I really don't like it. I'm not gonna go into too much detail why, but I just don't like a lot of the features, and I think, quite frankly, it's built kind of cheap. D700 is kind of more of just a full frame backup, so this doesn't get used a lot, but about 5-6 years ago I had all my full frame cameras were these, and I've decided just to keep one as a backup. D300, D200, obviously these are very old cameras. These rarely see use. These are just backups in case you know, stuff hits the fan and I don't have any equipment left and I just need a backup. So this is what I would use these for. These are actually infrared converted cameras. These are a special type of photography that we specialize in and offer to our clients, so I'm not going to go into detail, but this is a D7000 and D80 infrared converted. A couple light stands and a monopod and a tripod for a variety of shooting situations. Hold my cameras using my Holdfast strap. I have 2 of these. They're awesome. Our strap is also a good option as well. Moving on to lighting equipment, I recently switched over to the Godox system. This is what I use. I have 7 of their speed lights, 1 of their tiny ones. This is a piece of crap though. I would not recommend buying this particular version. A couple of triggers, as well as the Godox 8200 Wistro strobe. So moving on to the lens selection, this is kind of where I'll get in a little bit more depth. I have a variety of primes and photojournalism zoom lenses to cover a variety of situations and typical times during wedding day. So it's kind of starting with what lens I use the most is going to be probably the Nikon 105 1.4e. This is Nikon's right now probably arguably one of their best portrait lenses they make. The focal range is perfect to cover a wide variety of situations. It focuses pretty quick for a prime lens. It's super sharp, and the bokeh background blur from the images this produces is amazing. So this is definitely my favorite lens, even though it's a giant, it gets a little heavy shooting with it all day. This is an 85. Don't really use this too much. This is actually I give this off to my wife when she's shooting on the same day as me, but this lens right here, the 85-1.8 by Nikon, this is the best lens for the money. At just under $500, it's an absolute steal. The images and the image quality it produces is absolutely phenomenal. So if you're on a budget, you're a budget wedding photographer or portrait photographer for that matter, this lens is absolutely amazing. But don't use it really much anymore just because simply the 105 is far superior, but you're also paying about $1,500, $1,600 more for this lens than you are for this. This is my Sigma 24-35. I actually have this lens on my hip pretty much the entire day. It's a nice to get some images on the wide end and then get some a little bit in the further zoom range. So it's 24-35. So this is pretty much my typical lens if I'm looking for just some wider shots or standard coverage shots. I use this a lot mainly for posed group photos as well. And at f2 aperture range, it actually has some pretty good depth of field as well. It's not perfect. It does have a couple flaws, including missing its focus occasionally on the wider end, but it's still a great lens. It's pretty sharp. I've been pretty happy with it. Before I switched to the 105, this is the primary portrait lens I was using, and now my wife, this is her main lens that she uses for weddings. This is her favorite lens. This is the 135 f2 defocus control. This is absolutely killer lens for portraits. In my opinion, it's one of the best portrait lenses that Nikon has ever made. That 135 range just gives you some incredible bokeh, incredible separation between your subject and the background, and I highly recommend picking one of these up if you have a budget of around $1,000. Because it is almost 20 years old, there are a couple small flaws with it using it on a digital camera, but they're easily overlooked when you see the image quality this produces. This is the Nikon 10.5mm fisheye. It's actually a crop frame lens. I don't use it very much anymore, but any need you have for a super wide lens, this is going to work pretty well just to get some unique perspectives and some unique shots. Kind of going back on the wide end of things again, this is the Nikon 20mm 1.8. Pretty inexpensive lens. I think it's just under $800. If I ever need to shoot at a wider focal length, if I'm doing drunk dancing shots during a reception, as I call them, or I just want a really wide perspective, this is a great lens. I also, this is my go-to lens for for landscape photography. And this is everyone should know what this is. This is the Nikon 24-70. It's the photojournalist's go-to lens. It's perfect. I've been using this for years. This is the oldest lens I own. It's just very versatile. Need to send it in though, because as you can see, the grips tend to fall off on these things. But perfect lens. It's not as sharp or doesn't let in as much light as the Sigma 24-35 does, surprisingly, but still a great lens. My wife primarily uses this as her primary wedding day photojournalism lens. And then should be, again, no surprise people, this is the 70-200. This is my workhorse. This is, if I'm not doing posed portraits, this is on my camera pretty much the whole day. This is my go-to ceremony lens, my go-to reception lens, where I'm capturing speeches and moments and all those candid shots that you need to get at a wedding. So absolutely phenomenal lens. There's a lot of reviews online. Nikon just released an updated version of this, which apparently is even better. And obviously Sony and Canon and Fuji and all those companies make similar versions of what they of the 70-200. And this is a 2.8 version. I'll actually be picking up an f4 version as well for my wife, because primarily she's been using this lens to capture all of her photojournalism moments, but as she's discovered quickly, it's pretty slow at focusing, which obviously for capturing candid moments and emotions and all that during a wedding, you need something that focuses really fast. So we'll be picking up another one of these as a result. Couple more lenses here. This is the 60mm macro lens. I don't use this a lot, but I do have one because it does have a very unique purpose, which is getting macro shots of details at a wedding, more specifically ring shots and decorations and all that. And finally, this is just a standard 50mm lens. I don't really use this that much. It's more of just a backup. It's a nice, simple prime lens. Nice, typical 50mm focal range. Not a bad lens to have, and it's pretty sharp, lets in a great amount of light, and these lenses are under $400. This model I believe is about $350, so can't go wrong with it. So that's pretty much all my gear. Got my lighting equipment, my lenses, my camera bodies, and some accessories, light stands and tripods and all that. Let me know in the comments what you guys use for your weddings, what you think of this selection. Thanks for watching.